I'd like to introduce Mary Montano. I met Mary, and I know she doesn't mind my saying this, when she was in prison, and I was in prison ministry. I wasn't there on a permanent basis. I'm a goody two-shoes. That can't happen to people that goody two-shoes get caught too. So, and Mary and I we had the opportunity to meet and bond then, and she got involved in Aglow as soon as she got out. If you were here last month, I told you a little bit about the job that God got her right when, shortly after she got out of prison. She came to the Lord because of her husband who knew him, and he had passed away, and she just thought, I need to know who this God is, and she found out. So I'm sure there's a lot of things on the flyer that were said about Mary. I just think she's an awesome person, and every time we get together, she has my mother's birthday, so we always greet each other on February 24th. But she's just awesome. I see her at conference, we don't see each other. She and another girl gave me a homie award because I grew up down the road from them. So I am a home girl to Mary, whether she remembers that or not. So anyway, we'll look forward to hearing Mary after the worship, so let's give her a hand now. Yay!
Nancy wanted to share something.
Oh, and Nancy wanted to share something.
You cleared it upon
Oh, is it your wrap?
Yeah, it's my wrap. The last day of the month, God is so good. Can you say that?
all the time.
My first marriage, which I never wanted to divorce, but I did, the Lord visited me and gave me a song on that day that I got married long ago. So it was on the 29th of January I wrote this. And I was reading. How many of you have the Passion Bible?
Yes.
Oh, I love that Bible. I could just camp out in the Bible. So I was meditating and praying over Psalm 41, and this came up. El Shaddai. When you sit enthroned under El Shaddai, you're hidden in the strength of the Lord Most High. He's your hope. He helps you cope. He protects you, never rejects you. Do not fear, for God is near. He's El Shaddai, the Lord Most High. Don't worry, don't fret. He's not failed you, I bet. When you live in the shadow of El Shaddai, you're under the wings of the Lord Most High. He's your hiding place. It's a holy place. He's given it grace. He hears your cries. He hears your pleas. He hears your prayers and answers these. He's changed your story, so give him glory. He's El Shaddai, the Lord Most High. He changed you with his wraparound love. Continue to praise the God above. Pause in his presence all your days. He created you for worship and his praise. Angels on the left hand, angels on the right. Angels all around you, but out of sight. He is El Shaddai, the Lord Most High.
Good morning. Before we start worship together, I wanted to share a song, and I haven't written for a long time, and I sat down this week after my husband actually was teaching on Wednesday night out of Isaiah 42, just kind of going through the scriptures and seeing how Christ was prophesied about in Isaiah, which has been great. But that passage specifically talks about how a bruised reed he will not break. And it's kind of funny because the day before I was walking my little basset hound, and she ran really fast. She saw something, and there was like an uneven sidewalk, and I fell super hard.
Oh.
My name is Reid, last name, and I'm bruised right now. I'm like, this is a true word for me. But I think I'm joking, but the truth is I've been bruised a lot. As we look, all of us have. But we look back over our lives, but Jesus has always met me, and he'll let me be a little bruised, and I get frustrated with him on that. But the thing that my husband shared that I never knew though is back in the day, a reed was used to write, and the picture was that when it's broken, you can't write anymore. And so I was thinking, well, as a songwriter, I get bruised and I don't want to write anymore, and I don't want to create, and I don't want that the music to come because I'm frustrated or whatever. I tend to be a little stubborn. But you know what? The Holy Spirit has given me life again and again and again. And, you know, the songs will come. And I thought it was fantastic you shared that Nancy, you shared that rap, because that's, you know, you're a bruised reed that hasn't been broken. You know, he's giving you songs and words, and, you know, he's really still speaking life. And I know a lot of you, God is gifted in so many ways in this room, not only with speaking, but creating. And God's a creative God, you know? And he wants to give us these things, and we have to be open. We have to say, Lord, I feel bruised, but I'm going to let you use me. And there's suffering all around, but you are God, and you're with us in that suffering. And that's what the song's about. So. Confidence is found in the promises you made. You will complete good works through faith. May love abound even more in what we do, as we simply grow to trust in you, releasing the chains. 'Cause freedom, as you say, when the path gets hard to see and your light starts flickering, I will be with you. I will be with you. Like a tender heart that's bruised just for standing on the truth, I will be with you. I will be with you in the suffering. To live is Christ, and to die is gain. Convinced of this, we learn to remain steadfast in the hope you give, letting go of all our offenses. There's comfort in your love when we hear you speak to us. When the path gets hard to see and your light starts flickering, I will be with you. I will be with you. Like a tender heart that's bruised just for standing on the truth, I will be with you. I will be with you in the suffering. I'll be with you through the storms that rage around. I'll carry you, my child. Of the cross before us, may we trust in the promise of hope you bring. Work out our salvation's trembling, kneeling here to pray. We gently hear you say, when the path gets hard to see and your light starts flickering, I will be with you. I will be with you. Like a tender heart that's bruised just for standing on the truth, I will be with you. I will be with you in the suffering. Don't be surprised by these fiery trials. I'll carry you, my child, in the suffering, in the storm. So there you go.
Wow.
If you guys want to stand. I'm getting a little buzz, but okay. Yeah, we'll stand if you want to. You don't have to stand, but you're welcome to. We can worship the Lord together. I know sometimes it's hard, so.
Sun sets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child.
feels like you're against us when those things come. You went away without beginning. One with God, then Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Your name is wonderful. Your name is wonderful. Death could not hold you. The veil torn before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. You have no rival. You have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom. Yours is the glory. Yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. Your name. We love your name. Jesus. I was reading Zephaniah chapter 3. And in that passage in the middle, somewhere in the, kind of halfway down, I can't remember what verse it is, but it says, He'll rejoice over us with singing. I don't know if you guys remember the song. It's an older one. I used to do it like probably a decade ago, but the song came to my mind. Because you dance over me while I am unaware. You sing all around, but I never hear the sound. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you and how you love me. You paint the morning sky with miracles in mind. My hope will always stand, for you hold me sing of your love forever. I could 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 sing of your love forever.
My friend Mary. Thank you, I'm so happy to be here. Yesterday I had lunch with a friend of mine that's a missionary to Mexico, and I was telling her that I was coming here today, and she said, you know, how long have you been with those women? I said, about 30 some years. And she said, you know, those women have saved your life. I said, that is the truth. That is the truth. Because I did go to a church right away after I got out of prison for the third time. And the church was a great church, but Aglow also took me under their wing when I got out. And they gave me the balance that I needed. And so I clung to the Aglow teachings before I clung to the church teachings, because I knew that Aglow was steering me right. I met Aglow when I was in prison, like I say, and the teams of women would come in. I had just gotten there because my husband had just died. I was out on an appeal bond, and after he passed away, the day he passed away, I received the Lord because I was so desperate. I wanted God to heal him and to not let him die. But I prayed and prayed and prayed, not even knowing who I was praying to, but my husband knew because he was a Christian. And so he passed away, and I got saved that same day. And then 3 months later, I was sent back to prison to finish the time that I was doing the appeal on. So that's when I met Aglow. Isn't God wonderful? He had a plan all along. Even though I had to return to prison, I knew that there was a reason I was there. So I went and I met all these beautiful ladies, and the first time I saw them walk into the chapel, I just felt the love of God. I had only a couple of months ago received salvation, and I didn't know what that really meant. I didn't know how to act or talk or walk, but I knew that something had happened to me. And these ladies came in Saturday after Saturday to teach us the gospel and how to read the word and how to sing praises to the Lord. And it was so wonderful. One of the women was Carol. And I like to tell about Carol because, and the first time I said this in a public meeting, I was hoping she would not get offended, but it was the truth. And so when I knew she was coming, which was the second Saturday of every month, she was doing the teaching on the Bible study. I didn't want to go because I knew she was coming. And the reason for that was because she got into the Word, and she said what the Word said. She gave us examples of what we could do and not do. And since I was so newly saved, I couldn't handle some of the don't do's. So I didn't want to hear it. But you know, as time went on, I began to see that there was so much wisdom that she was giving us, and it was things that I needed to hear, needed to know, so that I would not continue in the lifestyle I had been living before. One of the things that she said once was, she says, if you commit to something, she says, fulfill it. Don't make an excuse about why you can't do it after someone comes and invites you to go to the mall or invites you to go to the beach, and you say, oh, well, okay, I guess I could miss not feeling my commitment because I'm going to the beach. She said, no, you do what you commit yourself to do. You don't make excuses. And I thought, wow, you know, that's kind of hard to do. But, you know, I learned from her, and everything she said was the truth. So
who was my mentor when I was assigned to go back into the prison as one of the Aglow ladies was Carol. And, you know.
Tell the story about going in.
What?
The story about going in.
Yeah, I was getting to that. And when it was my first time going back in after 2 years of praying and asking the Lord to please let me go back in there because I wanted to tell the ladies all about the Lord. And Carol was my mentor. She was my partner. It was just she and I that were going back in. And when we got to the chapel, usually it's all lit up and the women are waiting inside. This time it was dark. There was no one in there that we could see. And we walked in and we turned the light on and we heard something in the very back of the chapel. And we walked back there to see what was going on back there. And there was this woman on her knees praying in the dark. And she was a woman that I knew while I was in prison. And she was a Christian and coming to the Aglow services. And when we saw her, we said, Jenny, I said, what are you doing? What's going on? And then she said, Mary, she said, when did you get back? I said, I didn't get back, I came back. I said, to come and talk to you about the Lord. And she said, oh my gosh, she says, I was back there praying because I'm leaving in a week. And I was asking the Lord to give me a sign that I could make it. She goes, and you walked in after being out for all these years. She said, so now I have hope that I can make it. So, God is so good. I want to tell you a story about something else, and I'll get back to some of those things, but for now I want to tell you, how many of you remember when the movie Cinderella came out years ago? I was 11 years old when that movie came out.
Oh, the animated version?
The animated.
Yeah.
The animated. I was 11 years old. At that time it cost 9 cents to go into the theater. And I would go with my 2 boy cousins because we were so poor we didn't have the money to go, but we would find bottles during the week, bottles and cans, and we would go redeem them and get the 9 cents to go into the theater. And then one would pay at the door, and he would go in and he would go through the side, open the door and let us in so we didn't have to pay. So that was our weekly ritual. But when Cinderella came out, we went. They didn't want to see it, I did. And so we went to see it. And as I'm sitting there watching Cinderella, it was so magical and so enchanted that I was sitting there thinking, I want to stay and watch it again and again and again. And I was trying to count up the times I could see it before midnight. And there was no way I could stay because I would have really been in trouble if I would have stayed. But I always remembered that. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, it had such a wonderful ending, the storybook ending of her living an enchanted life after she married the prince. And I thought, I wonder what happened to her. What happened to her after she got married and went into the palace? And it was always something that I always wanted to know. And then later they came out with the movie Cinderella 2, and it said that it wasn't so great because she had to put up with the new rules and the regulations. She had to learn to get along with different people. She had to exclude people that she loved and that she knew from when she was a child and she was poor. And so I began to see, you know, it wasn't so enchanting after all. And that ministered to me because one of the things that I did after I was released from prison, Lee Cougar, who was the president of the Aglow prison board, invited me to come and serve with them. And as I was there with them, we began to go to the conventions that Aglow has every year in a different state. And so the first one I went to was in Texas. And that was like 28 years ago, something around there. And we were there and we were in a hotel, a beautiful, beautiful hotel that overlooked a little, like a little river. And it has escalators to go all the way to the top. It had a banquet room, and I mean, they had all this beauty and all of this. I had never been out of California before. And I'm looking at all of this wondrous stuff, and I'm thinking, I told Lee, I feel like I'm Cinderella. I feel like I have been transported from a very horrible life into a life of fantasy. because I'm experiencing so much. And all of the women there were Christians. They were beautiful women. I mean, it was just a spirit of love and beauty. And I thought, wow, I am Cinderella. And so sometimes we see things way in the past that we hold on to, and then, you know, somehow it just magically just becomes something beautiful that the Lord transforms in our lives. And I will always remember that. I thought of that as I was coming here, because I want you women to know that Aglow is a transformer.
Amen.
That through the Aglow women, I have learned so much. I am a part of so many women that have ministered to me and cared for me throughout these years. There's so many women that I could name, and Lee Kruger is one of them. And she was the president, and she had so much faith in me that I was going to do all right, that she invited me to her home for prayer meetings every month. There were so many women there. Erlene Lemming was there. She had been my spiritual mother for all these years. But Carol Drey, I mean, she has been so wonderful. Do you know that she calls me every year on my birthday and sings happy birthday to me?
And I'm a professional, so.
She has never forgotten my birthday. So the same day as her mother's, and so she remembers me. But that is so touching. I really love that. But I want to talk to you about another woman, a woman in the Bible. And this past year, the Lord ministered to me very heavily about this one woman. And I wanted to share it because it was such an important discovery for me. And it was Rahab. And as I was reading about Rahab, we all know the story about how she had the two spies that came into Jericho as the Israelites were getting ready to destroy Jericho. So she hid them. They came to spy out the land, and she was there, and she knew. The important thing about Rahab is that she had never met God or been preached to or talked to about God, but she had heard. She heard about this great God that was able and powerful enough to destroy the armies that were coming against the Israelites. And she believed it without having somebody to tell her anything. She knew and believed it. And she believed that these two spies would be able to help her and her entire family escape when Joshua would come into that city. And she believed it enough to have the promise, if she helped them escape, that they would save her and her entire family. And that was a lot of faith on her part. So they said that they would do that. They agreed, and when she helped them escape, they went back and they told Joshua that they had promised this woman that they would save her and her family. And we know the story about how they marched around Jericho for 7 days, 6 days, and on the seventh they shouted and the walls came down. We know those stories about how great God was and how he did a miracle there. I mean, to bring down a wall, to bring down a city with a shout. I mean, that's got to be a miracle, you know. And sometimes in this day and time, we think about God and we think about the things that we want him to do, and we think it's not possible. How is that going to happen? How are we going to do that? But you know, we forget that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and that he can do the same things that he did back then, he can do them now. And we need to begin to really experience and decree the impossible. We need to do that because he is waiting for us to rise up in the faith of Rahab, that we know that he is able to do these things, that he is willing to do these things, but we need to trust him and to believe in him. But when Rahab was rescued, she went with the Israelites, and I always wondered about her too. I have a habit of wondering what happens to people after the story ends. And so I always wondered what happened to Rahab. I never really heard anything more about what happened, or you know, where she went, or you know, how her story went after that. But last year, as I was reading the Word and reading the same thing that I've read over and over the past 30 years, you know, we read the same thing over and over sometimes, I discovered that Rahab married one of the spies. His name was Salmon. He was one of the spies. And they had a child. And the child was Boaz. And the child was Boaz. And I thought, no, it has to be another Boaz because I've never heard anybody say that. That's so important. Why would somebody say that? And so I kept reading. That made me really begin to dig. And then I went to my son, who is a Christian also, and he's been saved longer than I have. He was a young boy, and I'll tell you about him in a few minutes. But I went to him and I told him, did you know that Rahab was Boaz's mother? And he said, good Boaz. And I told him, and he said, no, Mom. He goes, you read it wrong. I said, no. So I pulled out the Bible and I showed him and I read it. He goes, wow. He goes, I didn't know that. And I said, I didn't either. I just discovered it. And then he told me, he said, Mom, if the Lord revealed that to you right now, he goes, it's because he's telling you something. He's telling you something about this connection. And I thought, he goes, so pray about it. Pray about what the Lord is trying to show you through that. So I said, oh, okay. So I did. I was praying and asking the Lord, what is it that you want me to see? This is such an important discovery. Am I the only person in the world that knows this? I don't know. It's so important. And as I prayed and as I went about my business and went about my days, the word that the Lord kept giving me was legacy. And I thought, legacy, that's right, legacy. She passed her legacy on to her son, and they all were in the lineage of Jesus Christ. And I thought, wow, we all have a legacy that we're leaving behind. We all have a lineage that we're leaving behind. And we need to really be aware of our lineage and our legacy and what are we leaving behind. So one thing that I did was I began to work on legacy books for each. I have 4 children. I began to work on legacy books for each one. And I was preparing them for Christmas, that I would give each one of them their book. And each book contained pictures of all the family, starting with my mother and the aunts and uncles and children and grandchildren. Each one was specific for that child. And then I found their birth certificates, their school. I kept all their school records and immunizations and everything that pertained to that child. I put it in their book. And for Christmas, I gave that to them. And they were so touched, and I explained to them, that is your legacy, and it's to pass on to your children. And it goes on and on and on. And I remember reading in the Word how they would talk about their legacies to their children, and we were supposed to pass the Word on to our children. And I thought, that's what I was supposed to be doing, and I haven't been doing it. But now I recorded it all in these books. And so I was so happy with that. And my children were very happy with it. And my question is, what is our legacy? We need to begin to discover what our legacy is, and to see the importance of passing that on to our children. And like I say, I have 4 children, 1 boy and 3 girls. And my son, when he was 15, 16 years old, he was in a gang in Los Angeles. And one night I received, this is before I was saved, one night I received a phone call that my son had been shot in a gang fight. So I got up, and my husband was saved, and I told him, I'm going to go look for him. I'm going to look for his body and see what happened, where he is, and if they took him to the hospital or what's going on with him. And my husband wanted to go, but I said, no, I want to go. I said, you stay here, and in case the hospital calls or the police call or somebody calls, just wait here with the other kids. And so I went out there looking for him. I found nothing. I didn't see anybody, any disturbance, any crowd of people. I didn't see anything. And I went home, and I said, I couldn't find him anywhere. Did anybody call? No, nobody called. So I just sat there on the couch just waiting and waiting. And finally, around 4 o'clock in the morning, the door opened and he walked in. He's 6 feet tall. And so he walked in 6 feet tall, and he walked in just casually like there was nothing wrong. And I said, where were you? He said, oh, I was out with my friends. And I got up and I hit him. I said, no, you're lying to me. Something happened. Tell me what happened. And then he said, how did you know? And then I told him that they called me. He said, oh. He goes, yeah, that's true. He goes, but the bullet, he goes, it just flew by me. I heard it as it went by my ear. He said, and when I heard it, he goes, I jumped into a bush, and I hid, and then I crawled away, and I got to safety. And I said, oh, that does it. I'm packing you up in the morning, sending you to live with your father in Santa Barbara, because his father was a Christian. His father had been saved in San Quentin Talk about legacy.
Wow.
He had been saved in San Quentin. He had been a heroin addict for years. But he had become a Christian, and now he was serving the Lord in Santa Barbara. I said, you're going to go live with your dad. I would rather have you 100 miles away than here in the house and not knowing if you're safe. I said, so you're going. So he did. He went, and he got saved. That's how he got saved. Well, after a few months, he came back, and he said, Mom, I still wasn't saved. He said, Mom, my pastor's wife gave me a prophetic word. I said, oh, what was it? And he said, she said that I was going to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and that I would, he was going to open the doors to the finest schools in the land. And I thought to myself, I said, that's such a mean woman to tell. Because I know his school records. When he was a little gang member, he didn't go to school, he would ditch, he would go out with his friends. And I thought, you know, that is so mean for her to say something like that to him. But you know, he believed it. And that was what was important. He believed it, and he began really applying himself. He believed in the promises of God. He began to read his word. And he ended up going to a city college first because, like I say, his grades were not that great in high school. So he went to city college, then they accepted him at UCSB, then he went to Harvard, then he went to, the Lord just opened doors for him, and he became a doctor. So, you know, between my son, my husband, and my ex-husband, the three of them were praying for me. And the word says that the prayers of a righteous man availeth much. And so I came to the Lord on that day that my husband died. And I'll tell you something else about legacy. And this I just recently learned. This is how the Lord has been dealing with me lately, is about legacy. When my husband was alive, and he died 32 years ago, but when he was alive, he and I worked together. We met on the job. And he used to work with gang members, gang kids. And so he took this little kid, it was this little, he must have been about 12 or 13, and he was a little gangster, and he wore a little trench coat, and he wore a little hat, you know, that he was a little gangster. And my husband really took a liking to him, and he used to bring him to our house so he could hang around with my son. And so he would take them to the movies, to the games, and to different things. And finally, this young boy, his name was Danny, he accepted the Lord. And then my husband took him to a ranch with his church, a boys' ranch. And the boy stayed there. Danny stayed there at the ranch, serving the Lord. And as he grew up, he became a leader in his church. And as a leader, they put him over the kids because he was still a young kid, and he was a good example now to all the other kids. And they sent him to London because our church had another church in London, and they sent him there. He went there, and he stayed there teaching the kids in London for a few years. And my daughter, when she turned 18, my youngest daughter, she decided she wanted to go to London. So she went to London, she stayed at the church, she met Danny over there, who was fruit of my husband, her father, and she met him there, and he introduced her to the kids there in the church. He took her around. He had this other friend named Warren. I don't want to throw out a lot of names, but Warren became my daughter's best friend. And he came here to America to live. So once he was in America, his mother and aunt started coming to America to visit. And sometimes he stayed at my house. The aunt, she comes now every year and visits in my house for 2 or 3 weeks a year. And I did not know all of this circle that I just told you about how this whole thing began. But she comes to my house, and she tells me that she feels peace when she comes to my house. And she comes and she wants to know God. She doesn't know him, but she does go to church with me. And she's been falling in love with the Lord more and more and more. And so this last year in December, when she came, she started telling me the story about how she was so involved with all these different people that I just mentioned. How that circle just came all the way around, and it landed in my house. And it started in my house with my husband. And I thought, wow, you know, God's hand is not short. It reaches across the ocean to other countries, to other nations. And we know that as Aglow, we know that. But to see it happen personally in my own home, and to know that this woman is fruit of my husband who passed away 32 years ago, I am just overwhelmed. I'm just so amazed. And I thought, this is his legacy. He left a legacy and I didn't even know it. And so I say all of that to say we each have a legacy of our own. We each have people that we're to reach or have reached, and that we are going to bring to the Lord and teach about the Lord, and they will go on to do the same thing after we're gone. And so the whole cycle just starts over and over, because the Lord's word is true, and it's yes and amen. And he's always willing to bring us to a place where we can use our gifts, we can use what he has given to us, and that's what we're here for. We're here to create our legacies and to leave behind the words that he puts into us, the lives that we're to touch, and how it's amazing how he's able to just touch, and we don't even know, we're not even aware of it. And so I am just amazed at what God does. And I'm amazed that I was able to discover this fruit of my husband. I'm so proud of it. I'm so happy. And I'm happy to host this woman every time she comes now, because I know that I'm investing in the fruit of my husband. And so I am just in love with the Lord. I love what he has done in my life. I love my life. I am single. I have been single since my husband passed away. And people ask me, aren't you lonely? Don't you want to get married again? No, I have not even thought about it since he passed away. I don't think, it's not something I think about, because I am so fulfilled with the love of God. Amen. And I know that I am in the place where I'm supposed to be. And I'm not saying that I don't have ups and downs, I do. But, you know, they're easy to cope with when you trust in the Lord. Amen. And he helps us through those times that we're so doubtful sometimes. And when we pick up the word and we begin to see somebody like Rahab that has so much faith and so much trust in a God that she didn't even know, I think, wow, you know, who am I to doubt? Who am I to say, how can this happen? How can this be? And God's word is just everlasting. It is there for us to always just hold on to. I say that I am a part of so many Aglow women, and I have met so many women along the way, especially in prison ministry. They are so dedicated and committed, and I have traveled with them to different states, to the conventions. I have traveled with them and roomed with them, 5 in a room, and you know that's hard. In prison, you don't have 2 to a room because you can't get along. But women Aglow, we would travel 5 in a room, and there would be no problems. It would be just so easy, so much peace, so much love, so much respect for one another. And I thought, I can't believe women behave this way. You know, I can't believe, you know, that these women have so much respect for one another that that they can get along. I have to laugh because I remember one time Lee Kruger and I got there earlier than everyone else, and there were 5 in a room. And she came in and she opened up her suitcase and began throwing her clothes all over. She covered up the lampshades, she threw her clothes all over, her shoes, just everywhere. I said, what are you doing? She says, I'm going to surprise them. And it was so funny because when each person came in, they went, what happened? And she was just playing a joke on them, but it was so funny and out of character for her because she was such a neat lady. But that's what I mean. It was just fun traveling with these ladies. And so there's been so many different things that have happened as I traveled with them. On an airplane one time, Early Lemming and I were talking on the airplane, and the stewardess came by, and she said, she was listening to us, and she kind of overheard some of the things we were talking about prison, and she said, she leaned over and she said, so you go in the prisons? And then we go, yes, yes. And we were so excited that she wanted to know about us, and then she talked a little bit, and then she looked over at us and she said, how do you do it to go into those women? Like that really, you know, sarcastic kind of. And then Erlene and I looked at each other, and Erlene went, and I said, I am one of those women. She goes, oh, I'm sorry, look what the Lord has done. She said. So, I mean, we've had a lot of adventures, great adventures. And we have a prison ministry retreat every year up near Yosemite. And we gather together all the workers of the ministry and all the women that have been released during the year and even before that from the prisons, so that we can see and continue to minister to the women as they come out. So it's a very fruitful ministry. There are many women that have come out of prison and are serving the Lord and have taken their place in society, in their homes, as mothers, as daughters, as women in the workplace. And I know Carol wanted me to tell you about my story about when I was released from prison. The third time, and because I had not lived a normal, fruitful, productive, lawful life, I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out, because I thought, I don't know how to work legally. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I know now that I can't lie, I can't cheat, I can't steal, I can't do any of those things. So, as a Christian, so I was praying, I was asking the Lord, what am I going to do? And I was worried about it. And when I got home, I was asking the Lord, what should I do? What should I do? Where am I going to work? Because I can't even lie on the application. I have to say, yes, I was in prison. So I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. So one morning, I would get up in the morning and I would kneel by my bed and I would pray. And one morning as I was praying, the Lord whispered to me, go to the unemployment office. And I said, the unemployment office? You have to work legally to go to the unemployment office. And I said, so then I kept praying, and the Lord said it again, go to the unemployment office. I said, Lord, I can't go there because I never worked. I don't have a work record. So I started praying again. The third time, the Lord told me, go to the unemployment office. I said, okay, I'm going to go to the unemployment office, but I'm not going to lie to them. I'm going to tell them the truth, and I'm just going to trust in you that I'm supposed to go there. So I went, and I opened the door to the unemployment office, and there was hundreds of people in there. Lots of lines with different people, long lines, and I thought, okay, now where do I go? And I saw the handicap line. I said, oh, that's me. I was 40 years old. Not a single thing wrong with me, health-wise or otherwise, but I said, I'm handicapped because I have a prison record. So I went to the handicapped, and everybody there was handicapped. But when she got to me, she said, so what's wrong with you? I don't see anything wrong with you. I said, well, yeah, I just got out of prison. And she said, oh, you're perfect. I said, for what? And she said, we just opened up a new program, and we'll send you to school, pay you to go to school, and you will get a certificate at the completion of the school, and then we'll help you get a job. And I thought, wow. So I did. I signed up, I went to the school, I graduated, and on the day I graduated, they told us, write up a resume so that we could start sending it out and help you find a job. And I said, okay, but fear just ran through me again. And I ran to the bathroom, and I started to kneel in the bathroom because I was going to pray in the bathroom. And I didn't get to my knees because the Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you. And I thought, wow. So I got up and I went out there and I did my resume. I went home, and a few days later, the Lord whispered a name into my head, the name of a company. And I thought, well, I'll go try it. I don't know where that name came from, but I'm going to go. I went, I circled the grounds, walking, praying over the building, over the place, and then I went inside, and I told her, I'm looking for the lowest level position you have for secretary, because I just graduated from this school, but I really don't know how to do anything. I mean, I was just being honest because I thought, I don't want them to get rid of me the first day I'm there. So I'll just tell them ahead of time. So I told her everything. She goes, that's okay, that's fine, that's fine. And she did my typing test, she did all these tests on me, and then when I was leaving, she said, we'll call you tomorrow or in a few days. I said, okay. I got home and my phone was ringing, and it was her. And she said, can you come back tomorrow so you could be interviewed by the senior vice president? And I said, okay. And so I didn't understand that I was going to be interviewed to be his secretary. I didn't know that. I thought I was going back just to be interviewed because he's the one that runs the place. So when I got there, she said, she fixed my little bow on my blouse, and she said, you're going to be interviewed by the senior vice president. I said, I know, you told me. And she said, no, you don't understand. She said, he's looking for a secretary. And I said, no, but wait a minute. You told me that there was only one position available yesterday, and that it was the lowest position. She goes, that was yesterday. She goes, the moment you walked out of the building, his secretary walked out right behind you. And she quit. So now he's looking for somebody, and he has to see all the testing of the women that came to interview, and you're one of them. So I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't want this. But I went in and I interviewed with him, and I was just as honest as I could be. When I had to fill out my application, I told you I was really nervous about that. So I asked a guy at church that he was also an ex-offender, and he had a job at Rockwell Aerospace or something like that. And I asked him, I said, how did you get a job with your record? And he said, because I didn't answer the question, I left it blank. And I told the Lord, if you want them to know, have them ask me, and I will be honest and tell the truth. He goes, and they never asked me. So I thought, well, I'm going to do the same thing. So I didn't answer that question, and when I got interviewed by the senior vice president, he never asked me, and I did leave it blank. He never asked me, so I just went through the interview, and then he called me the next day, and he wanted to hire me at a very high salary. And I thought, wow. All I can ever say is wow. But he hired me, and I worked with him for over 20 years.
Wow.
And now you're saying wow. When the whole time I was there, he knew I was a Christian. He knew that I served the Lord. And sometimes he would go to meetings. We did low-income housing, and they would go to meet with banks. And then he would peek his head in the door and he'd say, Mary, think about us while we're gone meeting with these bankers. I go, you mean pray for you? He goes, yeah. So God gave me so much favor in that job, and he elevated me from, I was his secretary, but before I knew, over the years, he had me be his administrative assistant. He had me be his manager that ran around to all the buildings to oversee the buildings. He promoted me, and I know that was a favor of the Lord, because I walked in there not wanting to do anything that I didn't know how to do, and he taught me so much. I was even a bookkeeper, and sometimes he would send me to the bank with lots of money, and I thought, I cannot believe that he's trusting me with all this money. But I knew that God had put me in a place where, I would be tested. And I was never tempted. I was tested but never tempted, because I didn't want money. I wanted my salvation. And so God has been so good to me. And I love Aglow, because Aglow has helped me to make it through all this time. Churches have helped me, and I'm in a wonderful church now, but I always need Aglow, because that is my foundation. Aglow has been my foundation, and I love every single one of you women, even if I don't know your names, but I love you because I know that you're part of something big that God has put on this earth to create a legacy for the world.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Most awesome.
Yes.
I've heard her speak before, but it's like, wow. Yeah, wow. Wow is the word for the day. Don, would you come up to pray and close the meeting? Next month we have Barbara Duncan's daughter. Now, she spoke at a tea that I went to last year, and she talks about nutrition. And having been a Weight Watcher leader and receptionist and all of that. I didn't really want to go and hear her talk about nutrition because you feel like you know it all, right? Oh, those of you that have been Weight Watchers. Anyway, Michelle was just, it was absolutely an awesome meeting. She has a lot to share, and even if you don't really follow what she suggests, it's still really good. And she does have a book she may bring, I think it's $15, so, which I bought, and I've actually looked at it. I've looked at the pictures. But I just recommend coming just for any health things at all, and just learn how to eat right, so eat well. Anyway, so Don, if you could do what you usually do, be Don.
I was hoping you'd still be up there. The Lord so much wants to pray over you. Would that be all right?
Yes, absolutely.
I was listening to him feeling the presence of the Lord in you, and for you and through you. And we are blessed for you to come to us. Thank you. Thank you, Father God, for your will and purpose in this, your precious daughter. She is precious in your heart because you are precious to her. And we thank you for that example. We thank you for what we've received because of that communion. We thank you for your purpose in our lives that is growing, and we've not reached the end by any means. But thank you for that. It's kind of like a growth spurt. Thank you, Lord. Bless this daughter with all your purpose and your love for her. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you all next month. I'm done.